talking a little about the Nigredo and related matters. And we had that poem Kindness by Naomi Sayab-Nye. And I found myself just thinking about the nature, I suppose, well, in that poem, she makes an equivalence between the experience of sorrow and the arising of kindness. Yeah. And that got me thinking about the kind of nature of suffering, you know, which of course is central, isn't it, to the Buddhist teachings. I mean, it's a kind of raison d'etre of the whole of the Buddhist teachings, this idea that you can move beyond suffering in some way. And of course, I say of course, what do I know, but I don't think the Buddha meant that nothing difficult or bad, use that word, is ever going to happen to you in your life if you, you know, we all know that bad things happen to good people, don't we? You know, we all know that difficult things arise in our life. And I was thinking, well, what makes a difference? What is it we're actually talking about when we talk about moving beyond suffering? It's usually explained in terms of clinging, isn't it? And obviously this is part of the picture. In the alchemical traditions, everything has a kind of, what's the word, energetic sort of patterning underlying the thing itself. Like I suppose it has an energetic level, yeah. And the Nigredo, in a way, is from the practical side of alchemy. I say the practical, it's not really practical because it doesn't work, but in the actual theory of the transmutation of matter, it's kind of getting back to this sort of energetic patterning, back to its kind of original energetic patterning that allows it to be transformed. So this is the Nigredo in the sense of working with material, or that's a very partial explanation of the Nigredo, but that's part of the idea of the Nigredo. And I think to some extent we can apply the same idea to our experiences. Yeah? It seems to me that when something difficult happens to us, when we suffer, we have kind of two possibilities. We have the possibility of sort of trying to avoid it in some way. Yeah. And actually, oddly enough, the main way we try to avoid suffering, I think, is that we try and think ourselves out of it. So we quite often go into sort of mental hyperdrive. Yeah? We start worrying about it, we start mulling it over, we start. And usually part of that process is that we start projecting it out into the world. We try and disassociate from it in a way by projecting it out onto other people. The other alternative is to sort of try and experience it fully. But this energetic patterning isn't really cognitive. Yeah. So to get to the sort of root of it is to experience it more fully in a kind of bodily way, in a kind of on the level of sensation and feeling, and particularly the level of how we're using the heart symbolically in this week. You know, this idea that the heart is kind of below, in a way, it's below the rational mind in the sense that it's deeper, it's more essential in us. It's actually our center. And so, and I was talking about this morning as this idea of sort of leaning into or turning towards our experience. But I'm just saying this because, of course, this can be misunderstood quite easily because we're not really concerned from a meditative point of view with the actual kind of details or right and wrong of the whatever's happened. We're concerned with fully experiencing it in an emotional sense. Yeah. When we don't do this, when we aren't able to do this, whether it's, I mean, quite often we're just not able to do it because of the culture that we live in. I was thinking about this in terms of death, actually. I mean, I know this is a very common example given, but I think it's a valid example that as our culture becomes more and more averse to the idea of death, where death becomes a kind of defeat or a failure rather than not being understood as just a natural part of life, you know, in a way, a completion, you know, of a particular cycle of life. Of course, is entirely necessary, inescapable. But instead of it being understood in a way that holds it positively, culturally, this seems to be getting rarer and rarer, really. And of course, it's even the same with old age, isn't it? Where most, not all, but most indigenous cultures honor elders. We tend to put ours away in homes, don't we? You know, we're developing more and more aversion to the sort of naturalness of life, if you like, naturalness of life and death. But there might be all sorts of things that, for whatever reason, we're not able to fully experience, particularly when we're a child. One of the main ways that we are blocked from fully experiencing is with being shamed. We have you know, something difficult is happening in our life, and we're shamed or we feel shame, you know? And then it kind of gets buried, it kind of gets stuck, you know. We've got to be a little bit careful when we're talking about trauma, but it gets blocked in the body, energetically speaking, and can't be released, doesn't move through us as it should. And a lot of these are modern body work. We get this sort of idea of shaking, don't we? This that we physically, you know, these traditions where we physically put ourselves in stress positions to encourage shaking, particularly, interestingly enough, in the legs. It might go through the whole body, and this is they've got this idea from animals, haven't they? That, and of course, we are animals, but animals, when if they've been hunted and escaped, once they're safe, they'll just shake. They'll just shake, and it's like they're discharging that energy. So if we think about that emotionally, the times when we felt unheard or we felt shamed and all this material kind of gets stuck in us. And in order for it to be allowed to move through us, it has to be kind of contacted. It doesn't need to be necessarily, I don't think, contacted in a literal way or in a cognitive way. It might happen without us knowing what the actual kind of objective cause of it is. But nevertheless, it needs to come out in some way or other. Of course, it does, these things do come into consciousness, particularly in times of stress or in dreams, and all sorts of ways. And it seems to me that when we manage to fully experience suffering, this, I'm using that word quite broadly, you have to fill in the gaps because it is a very personal thing to us all individually, isn't it? We've all got, to use the term, we are all wounded, aren't we? And for the healing to happen, it has to happen through the wound. We all have our particular wound. I grew up with very poor eyesight from a child, so even at primary school I was wearing really thick lens glasses, you know. And though I was had a big effect on my life, because actually I was a very physical, exuberant kind of kid. And of course, you know, particularly when I was in primary school, I was just constantly breaking my glasses, you know. I was in a fairly poor family, actually, so I never had a spare pair of glasses. But I used to have to go to the school office and get a certificate so I could get free another pair on the NHS. My parents couldn't afford to buy them, they were very expensive, you know. But anyway, I'm making a meal of this story. But anyway, it left me feeling very shameful about my poor sight as a child. And I can see how for much of my life, I sort of covered it up. For as long as I could, I sort of behaved like I could see properly. So this meant I went through school very rarely being able to see the blackboard, etc., etc. Not, you know, and there was a lot of shame. And of course, shame is a very physical experience. And it is a literal, sometimes it's a literal turning away. You know, whenever the subject came up or whatever, I could feel, sometimes I would literally turn away, but I could certainly feel that impulse, that wish to turn away. And I think, you know, then at some point, actually, when my sight got so bad, there was no way of me hiding it. I went through a process of, and I did this quite consciously in meditation. I went through a process of kind of trying to work with it and meditate this feeling of shame. And in my case, and I'm not necessarily suggesting this as a methodology for other people, but in my case, I would, when I was settled and was feeling kind of positive in meditation, you know, I felt aligned and settled and open and happy. I would deliberately sort of recall or bring to mind incidents that would have in the past triggered this shame. And then I would just try and keep the body open and breathe and just kind of let it discharge, and it works. You know, it does work. You know that. Me talking about this to you, which, you know, is of course nothing, you know, it's a normal thing, but for a lot of my life, I would have found that very difficult. Yeah. So it's just an example of how we can discharge these energies if we're prepared to really face them, you know. But because human nature being what it is, of course, we tend only to face things when we have to, you know, if we can avoid them, we will. But I suppose I'm suggesting that meditation, and this might happen quite naturally, actually. I do think it can just happen without consciously trying to make it happen. Just through actually aligning the body correctly and working just to relax and soften the body, and perhaps also making sure that you attend to the lower regions of your body, you know, the heart downwards really, which, well, I don't know, I'm sure you can have trauma anywhere in the body, you know, but you can get stuck anywhere. I think for some people it gets stuck in the throat. Probably all these, I don't want to take these energy centers too literally, but presumably any of them can be disrupted in this sort of way, can be distorted. You know, there can be an overload or a deficit of energy at any point in the body, really, where. But for me, at least, it seems to be mainly the heart area and downwards, you know, that I've had to work on. I've gradually kind of worked up from the base, actually. This has happened kind of organically. For years, I was pretty obsessed with the base, and then the sort of belly area, and I seem to have moved up to the heart more in recent years. But as we were doing this morning, if you were there, I was saying that the heart needs to be both connected down, rooted, and also connected up. And then when this is the case, the heart becomes kind of the ruling or center in which the rest of the energy system kind of can organize itself. Actually, I mean, different traditions emphasize different parts of the body, really, but you know, especially the Chinese systems might emphasize different organs. But again, maybe we shouldn't take it all too literally. Anyway, I just wanted to say that, and I want to make it clear, I don't think there's any, you know, we don't want to suffer unnecessarily. I'm not suggesting we suffer unnecessarily. I am suggesting that meditation can be a place where you can work on this kind of energetic level, this physical holding level, or this energetic blocking level. This doesn't mean we might not also need to work on a kind of psychological level. I don't think that's what we're trying to do in meditation. I don't think we're psychologically trying to sort ourselves out in meditation. That's not quite how meditation works. I mean, this is just my opinion, of course, and you might have a different experience. But I think the real richness of meditation is that it works on levels that are sort of below the cognitive level. Which doesn't mean that when we work on this sort of more psychophysical level, of course, it might release material that does come into consciousness that has been hidden before, sort of blocked before, for whatever reason. And as I was saying this morning, probably the most important thing, along with the alignment and paying a careful attention to the physical and energetic experience that you're having, rather than always privileging the sort of cognitive experience. Our ideas, our kind of arguments, our kind of what goes round and round in our head. Rather than always privileging that, we need to come down into the body and have a more kind of full body experience. I was going to say something else then, and I've lost what I was going to say, but anyway, I hope that gives you a bit of more of a sense, perhaps, of how we're trying to work, and what I sort of, when I think of meditation as the alchemical process, it's this sort of thing I'm talking about, this sort of encountering ourselves on deeper levels that are not necessarily cognitive, or we can't necessarily fully comprehend them rationally. It means that we have to learn to trust something, trust our body in a different sort of way. I hope that makes some sort of sense of what we're trying to do. I was going to say, yeah, along with, this careful paying of attention, the other essential thing that I was emphasizing this morning is the development of kindness, love, kindness, whatever you want to call it. And particularly when we're talking about kindness or compassion, there seems to be a direct, there's an easing of suffering when we move from a self-centered concern to a kind of more universal insight into the nature of suffering. In the Buddhist scriptures, probably the most famous example is Kisagotami, isn't it, with the dead baby, a dead baby. The Buddha sets her this little task of finding the mustard seed, and this opens her heart to the universal nature of what she's gone through. What she's gone through couldn't be more personal. Couldn't be more personal, could it? The loss of an infant, the loss of a baby, her only childhood. Couldn't be more personal, but somehow by recognizing the universal nature of loss, of death, there's some kind of liberation. I think it's wrong probably to think that she no longer felt sorrow or unhappiness, but it was transformed. And instead of being something that kind of ate away at her, that more or less was driving her insane, it became something that opened her heart to the world. And I think this is what we're trying to do, really. And again, this is really in line with the nature of reality, isn't it? Because though we tend to experience ourselves as separate and discrete entities, as Buddhists, we know that that isn't true. We're not separate and discrete entities. We're always intimately involved with the world, and we're always intimately involved with all life. And somehow having this perspective, and ideally having a culture that encourages this perspective, which unfortunately I think our culture's got more and more away from this encouragement of feeling at home in life, at home in the world, at home even in our own bodies. Our own bodies are increasingly objectified, aren't they? Made into be objects that can be manipulated and whatever, So I think a lot of what we're doing is trying to kind of open to this more archetypal appreciation of our own suffering. And there's something, I don't really know how to express this, but there's something, just as in the case of Kisagosumi, there's some relationship to what's most personal, most intimate, and what's most universal. There's a strange dynamic relationship between these two. And when we make that connection, somehow, as I say, it doesn't mean we're free from sorrow or we no longer miss people that have died. It doesn't mean that, but it means somehow there is an acceptance of it, and somehow there's a possibility of kind of even a connection and joy in it. It's a funny thing, actually. Well, I won't go on. I'll leave it there. Okay, so let's do a bit of meditation together. We'll see what happens. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do, but get yourselves comfortable. I'm going to check my time. I don't know what you can see on your thing, but I'm not making phone calls. This is the only thing I can see the time on these days. And sometimes I can't even see the time on that. Okay, if I get it right, I need to keep a bit track of time. Okay. I'm not looking at my emails or anything. If you see me with a phone in my hand, I'm just looking at the time. Okay, dokie. Let's start with a couple of deeper breaths. I like doing this. I like this. I think I've already said the Tibetans think that a lot of distraction and meditation is caused by stale air in the system. I'm quite conscious on this retreat. There's a lot of people from different parts of the world where at a different time, it's dark here now, and I personally feel quite affected by whether it's in the daytime or in the evening. But I'm sorry if you're in the daytime from the point of view that you're kind of getting an evening session, because my own kind of experience seems to be quite influenced by what time of day it is. Anyway, there's nothing we can do about that. We have to bear with it. If you have got a nice, bright, blue sky above you as you're sitting, well, you can become aware of that. That's quite nice. Anyway, whatever sky is above your head, just allow your body, particularly scalp, crown of the head, and the surrounding out. Just see if you can sort of sense into it through that. Uh, that makes any sense to you. I don't know. See what you can do just by being aware of the crown of your head and being aware of the sky above you. And just imagine releasing the head up towards the sky. So we're not all about going down. In the past, I've been quite critical in my youth, in my younger days of Buddhism. I was quite critical of the emphasis put on the ascending aspect. You know, I thought Buddhism was too concerned with ascending up. But these days, of course, well, of course, these days, I think I've come to a more balanced understanding of our practice that both are necessary. We need to ascend, but we also need to descend. So kind of this releasing upwards from the crown, but actually this release upwards, I hope this doesn't sound too confusing, but this release upwards ideally starts with the root. So it's a whole body releasing upwards that is led by the crown. And this is the same when we relax the root from the crown all the way through to the root. Don't worry about that if you don't. Let's imagine the skull, top of our skull. Just as you might have seen those Tibetan skull cups. You know, so imagine the skull, a bit top of the skull, a bit like an introverted bowl, isn't it? And you could imagine our pelvis as a larger bowl. So they're kind of facing each other. And we're releasing the pelvis, dropping the bowl of the pelvis down towards the earth, down towards the core of the earth. At the same time, we're imagining releasing the cup of the skull up towards the sky. To see if you can feel a kind of energetic relationship as if they're more or less reflecting the energy. The face relaxed, soft face. The legs relaxed. Make sure that the hands are soft but alive. And then let's find the breath in the body. Find our breathing body between the pelvis and the skull. Let's imagine our spine, serpentine, linking the pelvis through all of these sort of major energetic centers of the body. The heart center in particular, perhaps, but well, one heart center in the middle, roughly in the middle of the spine there, linking the pelvis to the skull. Let's imagine the spine as it is. It's not just bone, but it's soft tissue, spongy tissue, nerve. That's more than anything. It's kind of an energetic channel, isn't it? All these kind of electric energy going through it. Of course, fluid. Sometimes when we think about our bones, that's fine, but all our bones, we tend to imagine bones as if outside of a body, because they're the bones that we tend to see and handle, bones that are no longer in a body, but of course bone in a living body is part of a living body, and it's living, growing thing with its marrow, its aliveness, not the dry bones that we know. And just imagining your spine. Quite often imagined a kind of ladder or a vine or a tree. The metaphor of trees are rather nice for us to put it. Because in trees, you've got the sap moving, the trunk. So see if you can just relax and let your body enjoy breathing. Bodies enjoy breathing. And use the breath. You can just use the breath to soften from the inside out. If there's any part of your body that feels dull or numb, you can just put a bit of awareness there as you breathe in and out. Get a bit of breath into those parts of your body. You might feel a little numb or locked in some way. Just gently breathing. Try and see if you can feel the breath in the whole body. So this is not quite just our physical breath, but more. Get the breath into the legs, arms and the hands, down into the pelvis, into those hip joints that need just to release as much as possible. The shoulders and under the scapula there, along the length of the spine. So the role of our sort of cognitive mind, if you like, is just to listen in a way. I kind of quite like this. I don't really like this scanning metaphor that we use for body work. It's too kind of medicalized, too kind of removed. There's a bit of kind of distance there, but if it works for you, that's fine. But you to find the metaphor of listening, try receptive, open. Awareness. We're kind of trying to create nice, stable awareness that allows energy, image, thought, sensations just to come into being and kind of move naturally through it. Well, the non-clinging stuff, isn't it? We're not setting up aversion to or clinging of our experience. I'm trying to create an energetic body, soft and open and aligned, with a certain strength to it, but it's aligned with gravity. So we're using the minimal muscular tension when we come into fuller and fuller alignment. And this alignment is an ongoing process. If you don't kind of get it right, then forget about it. It's actually a dynamic, fluid process in itself. Every time we breathe in and out, our center of gravity shifts very slightly as our belly kind of expands out there, diaphragm moving up and down. There's this constant micro adjustment that the body can do on its own. You can't do it consciously, but if you relax enough, you're sensitive, you can feel how your body is making this constant micro adjustment to accommodate gravity. And we can move slowly through a meditation. We can slowly, we're just using the breath and being sensitive, listening, softening to move into a, I'll say better alignment than that, better, more fully aligned and open posture. So in this way of working, our posture expresses us. Shunryu Suzuki, in one of his essays, says something that I've always found really intriguing and helpful. He says, when you meditate, you fully express yourself. In a way, meditation is the opposite from what we often think of as expressing ourselves. We're just sitting there, not moving. or not moving more than the breath moves us. Nevertheless, he says, when we meditate, we fully express ourselves. I find that a very beautiful idea, actually. Well, because psyche and body aren't really at all separate, we can express ourselves fully through the posture. And when we manage to do this, kind of everything else takes care of itself, really, I think. Because we're not only aligning our body, we're aligning our body in relation to the world, to the energetics of the world. Right? So, check the legs. I just check back on my leg and feel holding in my leg. And just encouraging a sense of breath in my leg. Just very gently having the idea, sort of trying to encourage. Quite often talk to my body when I meditate, I ask my leg, maybe just relax a bit, then you just let go a bit more. That's all right. Let go a bit more. And as I was saying, it's just finding this voice, the correct voice to engage with yourself with. Not a demanding or irritated or ambitious voice, but just a kind, encouraging voice. It's okay to let go. It's okay to feel what you feel. So just working with your breath by listening, feeling into your body just as it presents itself to you. Notice what you notice. Nice connection with the earth beneath you and a nice connection with the sky above you. The sense of this, your world all around you. Time want to run away with us a little bit tonight. We're not going to have a laying down, but you need to get up and have a little stretch, whatever you need to do. You just do that. So just have a couple of minutes if you need to move about a bit. Anything else. Just 2 or 3 minutes. Come when you're ready, just come back to your meditation posture. We're just continuing what we've been doing. Maybe just placing an emphasis if it feels appropriate, and do it if you're happy doing what you're doing. But with that emphasis on the heart there, just sort of breathing in, sort of more of gathering yourself at the heart, and then releasing through the body and into the world, through the whole body, and into the world around you in the out breath. We're kind of gathering ourselves to the heart and the in breath, and releasing from the heart and the out breath. So we're kind of breathing our body, but also kind of breathing with the world. Those other things that breathe in some way or other, the trees, the animals, insects, the plant, and the earth itself. Making that connection between what's most intimate, deep in us, and also what's universal, inner world and outer world, something which is just constantly interpenetrating just by breathing in and out. is a bit of an evening poem or something. There's a Derek Walcott. Let the day grow on you upward through your feet, those vegetal knuckles, to your knees of stone. So by evening you are a black tree, and with evening let the swift thicken your hair, and the full moon rise from your forehead, and the moonlit veins of silver run from your armpits like rivulets under dry leaves. Sleep as ants cross your eyelids. You have never possessed anything as deeply as this. This is all you have ever owned, from the first outcry through forever. You can never be dispossessed. find yourself caught up with kind of mental activity, and check if that's holding in your leg, and release the leg. You're establishing that connection with the earth. Not to the heart, rather than worrying what you're thinking about, what you feel, the kind of tone of the weather in your heart. If you can stay with that kind of feeling level, it's fine, it might release memories or thoughts back into consciousness. Fine, just let them release. Let them be. You don't have to interrogate yourself. You don't have to argue with yourself. You don't have to justify yourself. Let the heart release. earth. Let the day grow on you upward through your feet, those vegetal knuckles, to your knees of stone. So by evening you are a black tree. And with evening, feel the swift thicken your hair, full moon rise in your forehead. The moonlit veins of silver run from your armpits like rivulets under dry leaves. Sleep as ants cross your eyelids. You have never possessed anything as deeply as this. This is all you have ever owned. From the first outcry through forever, you can never be dispossessed. So let's have a sense of one another, sense of sitting in Sangha and community and solidarity with one another. Sense of love for one another. We all know what it's like to be a human being. There's joy, there's sorrow. There's be a knowledge that connects us rather than separates us. And just keeping the posture a little bit longer. Just stop doing anything. Stop trying to control your experience. Just relax a little bit more. Just relax into reality. Lovely to sit with you tonight, and have a good day, night, and see you tomorrow.